Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli here. Welcome back out in the shop for a brand new video for you today. And in today's shop video, we're going to talk about 3 hooks to use for the drop shot. You know, a lot of times when you talk about drop shot fishing, you assume it's always nose hooking something. But there's 3 different ways, 3 different hooks we can use to incorporate different baits and to gain different action on that bait, okay? So drop shotting is not just nose hooking. We're gonna talk about these 3 methods. I'm gonna give you 3 different types of hooks, 3 examples of 3 different type of baits, and then we're gonna also talk about the scenarios to when to use those. At the very end, I wanna go over the rods and reels I use for them real quick, and then you'll be all set to catch more fish on a great technique like drop shotting. All right, let's start with the one that everybody knows about. Let's start with the nose hooking style hook. And when you look at this hook, it's known as it's got a lot of different names to it, okay? Drop shot hook is one. You've heard it called an octopus style hook. I've heard, you know, all these, a wacky style hook. But when you look at that style, and by the way, this is the Berkley Fusion, and they call it a drop shot style hook, okay? It's got just a little dip in it, and then it's got a nice little curve in. And nose hooking is a tremendous way to drop shot a bait when you want fluidity of action, okay? So my bait of choice, 100% without a doubt, and this is brand new. I'm going to open this. This is the Berkley flatworm. You've heard of this a lot, but this is a great bait to nose hook. And I want to show you how this one's going to go. By the way, on these drop shot hooks, the Fusion hooks, I carry them in 3 different sizes. A number 2, a number 1, and a 1/0. And I really try to pick that right hook for the size of the bait, okay? So on super tiny plastics, even smaller, this is the 3/8 flatworm. If I'm using a 2-inch plastic or a 3-inch plastic, I like that number 2 size drop shot hook. If I'm using 3.5 to 4-inch bait, this is my number 1 player, a number 1 drop shot hook. And then as you get to those bigger plastics, if it's the flatworm has a 4.25 or a 4.5-inch bait, and we're nose hooking, go up to that 1/0. But in either case, when we nose hook this bait, and by the way, that's a 3/8 flatworm, and I don't care if it's max scent or power bait or whatever plastic you're using, if it has a flat side, guys, if it has a flat side, we want to rig that flat side down, okay? So when we rig that, I literally look at that bait, I go in about 1/8 of an inch into the bottom of the nose, and I come out, okay? And that is the very traditional nose hooking style when we're drop shotting. So here's features, benefits, and then I'm gonna go to the negatives. Features and benefits, dude, action, 100% action. So clear water, tough fishing, current, when that current, the water movement's actually activating the bait. Just look at the way that thing slides and turns and dances on the hook, right? So when you're looking for maximum action, nose hooking is a great way to catch them, guys, okay? Benefit number 2 when I'm nose hooking is hookups, is landing fish, right? Anytime I have an exposed point versus a buried point, like look at that, a 3.8, the fish sees that fluidity of action, he comes up, he smells its max scent. When he eats it, dude, I've got him. 99% of the time, I have that fish hooked, okay? So fluidity of movement, maximum hookup percentage. Now the negative. Guys, when you're nose hooking, exposed technique, it's hard to do that around heavier cover, okay? So fishing heavy brush, fishing in thick weeds, fishing under docks where there's a snag around every post. There's another method, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But for sparse cover, you know, little sandgrass patches, an occasional rock or boulder, or just, you know, open water, gravel, points, ledges, mud banks. Dude, this is the way to rig it, right? Nose hooking is the way to rig it. So standard for drop shotting, nose hooking, great method. We're going to go to number 2. And number 2, I want to give you an alternate a method to rig a bait in the cases when you're not catching them. Okay, so you heard me say 98, 99% of the time when you nose hook, you catch them. But what about that other 1 or 2%? And guys, there are times when you're fishing a drop shot that you get the bite and you pull back and you're missing them. And dude, I'm not an expert, but I can tell you occasionally it will happen. They're grabbing the tail of the bait, they're grabbing right behind the hook, they're being finicky, they're being picky, and you're missing some bites. When that happens, we're going to go to hook rigging, drop shot hook rigging method number 2, and that is using a medium wire or light wire straight shank hook, okay? A lot of different hooks out there on the market that fit this bill. Size-wise, here it goes. I'm going to use a number 1. I'm going to use a 1/0, which I have here, and I'm going to use a 2/0. Once again, I carry those 3 sizes depending on the size of the plastic. But this, a 1/0 straight shank, medium or light wire hook when I'm drop shotting. This isn't a flipping hook, right? This is the medium gauge model, and it's got a little flex to it. So it's finesse hook, just like the drop shot hook, okay? But instead of nose hooking, we're going to use a method that allows you to have more hook and more bite. And it's a really big benefit of this. But let me show you the threading method first of all. So bait example for this one, I've got a bait I drop shot a lot, guys. This is a Berkley power bait water bug. And if you look at it, it's a great drop shot bait. It's got the flat bottom. You heard me talk about that on the flatworm. It has little tiny appendages on the side that activate with a very little movement. And then of course, last but not least, that water bug has a little bit of action in the tail, which most drop shot baits don't. And there's a time and a place when you want that. But I love to thread this bait instead of nose hooking it. So when I'm threading it, literally, guys, this is as old school as you can get. This is like back in when you fished night crawlers, right? I'm just going to thread that bait on there, thread that hook on there, so the hook comes out the top of the bait. I always want the flat side down. And this is the same thing if you're using a worm or a creature or whatever. If it has a flat side down. Because I'm just going in the middle of the bait and I'm going to go down, just stay in the middle body of the bait. I'm making sure everything's nice and straight. And when that body gets to the halfway point on that hook, that's when I know to push it out, right? That's my gauge. So as soon as I see that nose get to the halfway point, I push it out and I just finish shredding it. And what that leaves you is, look at how straight that bait is, right? So the halfway point on a straight shank hook is the way you measure it on this size bait. And again, guys, by the way, 3, 4, 5-inch plastics, number 1, 1/0, 2/0 hook, medium, light wire, perfect. So when I rig it like this, the positives are here are your positives. Bait that's straight, bait that's very, like, the hook itself is a support of the bait, right? It's acting as a spine. So when I rig it like that, the bait stays very straight and horizontal, right? So if I'm drop shotting and I'm doing more Damiki style drop shotting, real vertical, great way to fish them. If the fish are being pressured and they want that bait straight, they're being funky, they don't want it on an angle, great way. So benefit number one, it keeps the bait straight because it's a spine. Benefit number two, you already heard me talk about it. Dude, when they are missing that nose hook, when they're nipping at the back, I thread it. I simply change to threading, and now when they nip, dude, half of that bait is a hook. My hookup percentage goes to 100%, okay? So threading, great hookup percentage, keeps the bait straight, it's a spine. But here's the negative. Once again, like the nose hook, this is an exposed hook method, guys. So heavy cover, thick trees, brush, under docks, heavy milfoil, hydrilla in the middle of it. Not a great way to hook, okay? So it has its time, it has its place. And then we're gonna go to the last hooking method. And for the last hooking method, guys, and this one gets missed a lot. This one gets left out a lot in the hook realm of drop shotting, is a good old school Texas rig hook, okay? Regular good old school worm style hook, whatever you want to call it. This is a Fusion, Berkley Fusion. This is their EWG. But again, in hook sizes, guys, you ready? Number one, I'm sorry, a one, number one, 1/0 or 2/0 regular gauge worm hook. Not a heavy gauge. This isn't a flipping hook, right? This is just a medium wire hook. I like this Fusion EWG because it gives me a little more bite. But when I'm drop shotting around heavy, thick cover, nasty stuff, that's the hook I'm using, okay? And it's a great alternative to an exposed hook. For this style rigging, I'm going to give you just a gold standard. If you've been drop shotting yourself for a long time, you know how good this style worm is, and it's a finesse straight tail worm, right? 4 to 5 inch straight tail worm is a great drop shot bait, okay? One of my favorites right here, this is the Berkley bottom hopper. It's a power bait, and it's 475, right? Perfect complement to this hook in heavy cover. And by the way, that is one of my favorite colors ever for a drop shot. It's called Ike's Morning Dawn. It's almost like translucent pink. It's great in clear water. It's great in stained water. It's great in dirty water. I've caught smallmouth and spots and largemouth on it. But anyway, for this third method, guys, I'm going to just simply Texas rig it, okay? Once again, even the bottom hopper, if you notice, every drop shot bait I'm throwing has a flat bottom, okay? So when I Texas rig this bait, I want that flat side down. And you know the Texas rig. If not, go back in my archives. We've got a video on Texas rigging. We're going to go into the nose. Make sure that flat side's facing down. We're going to go in about 1/8 of an inch. Pop it out. Okay? We're going to continue to pull that little bottom hopper worm around. Flat side's down. And then when we Texas rig it, we're going to bury that hook in that worm. We want to make sure we keep that worm as straight as possible, and we want to pull that point through a few times, okay? So I just measure kind of where the back of that hook is, and that's the place where I pull it forward to make my Texas rig. I like to do it maybe 2 or 3 times, just get that channel working, and then just lay it as flat to that worm as you can get, okay? And here's what we're left with, guys. Worm that's perfectly straight, a worm that cannot get snagged. That's the key I want to talk about in a second. And that flat side's down. Okay, so let me give you the positives. We'll talk about the small negative, but let's start with the one I just mentioned. Guys, hard to drop shot the straight shank hook, hard to drop shot an exposed nose hook in heavy cover. Now we've got a bait. Dude, I don't care if it's standing timber and there's limbs everywhere, or brush piles, or hydrilla and milfoil in 8 and 12 foot of water, anything, under docks. That thing is going to allow you to fish it through heavy cover, okay? It's going to allow you to fish that bait through heavy cover. So, number one benefit, it's weedless, it's snagless. And not a lot of guys fish a drop shot in those scenarios, okay? Number two, you heard me mention it with the threading method, but the nice thing about Texas rigging, if you look at it, like that spine hook, like that exposed straight shank, it keeps the bait very horizontal. So you don't get a bait that does this, you don't get a bait that's moving around unnaturally and almost sideways. It stays very horizontal and straight. And in tough fishing, I really believe those fish that are inspecting the bait, they want something that's sitting like a real bait fish, right? They want something that's sitting horizontal in the water column. So keeps the bait nice and straight. But then, of course, guys, the one little negative is it pulls a little action out of the bait, right? And you can see that, right? On the nose hook, you can see how with hardly any movement, just in water, just sitting in water, that thing comes alive. So knowing it pulls a little action out of the bait when you Texas rig it, here's your solution for that negative. You ready? Impart a little more action, right? So when I'm Texas rigging my drop shot, I tend to shake a little more, pop a little more, right? Give it more hops, because that hook takes a little action out. I have to put a little back in, okay? So my 3 different hooking methods for drop shot: nose hooking, love it; straight shank, thread it, love it, especially when they're missing the bait; and last but not least, Texas rigging, great in heavy cover. All right, let's real quick talk about the 2 different rods that I use, and the reel and the line real quick. Guys, basically the biggest thing I want to tell you in this video on your rod selection is fish a medium light rod. Drop shotting, even on the Texas rig method, and I'm going to show you in a second, is really a technique where you're not jacking them, right? You're almost sweep setting into the fish. Because of that, I want a medium light rod. So, you know, that rod should have call it a 60-40 mix. 40% of that rod, right, to about there, should have flex, and the back of the rod should be backbone, right? So not too heavy, a medium light action. I really like a 6.6 to a 7.6 length, but here are my exact rods for these drop shots. Almost exclusively when I'm fishing those smaller baits with the exposed hook, okay, I'm using a 610 medium light. 610 medium light drop shot rod. This is if you look at it, you might say, wow, it's a new looking rod. That's the brand new Abu Garcia Ike series. You can tell by the cosmetics. 610 medium light. Perfect for those smaller nose hooked and straight shank threaded methods, especially the nose hook. Dude, you're throwing a little tiny 2 or 3.5 inch worm on a nose hook. This is the rod. 610 medium light. And on the reel, I just want a reel that has a nice, faster gear ratio, 6:1 to 1 or higher. By the way, that's the brand new Abu Garcia Ike Series reel. And if you're drop shotting, the opposite side of your handle has a drop shot keeper where we're going to talk about where we're going to hook that weight to, okay? So nice fast ratio on the reel. On the bigger drop shots and when I'm Texas rigging, I just want a little more rod, guys, right? Because think about it. Now I'm in heavy cover. Now I'm around stumps and brush and stuff like that. so I want a little more rod. So when I'm fishing around heavy cover, drop shotting, I go to the 7.4 medium light, also an Ike series. We got it in the new model, 7.4, but it's still medium light. Even with the Texas rigged hook, remember, it's a medium to light wire hook. Dude, I'm not hitting them like I'm punching or frog fishing. I'm getting that bite, and I'm almost just sweep setting it back and reeling. And little bit longer rod helps me compensate for that heavy cover. 7.4 medium light is my choice. Reel, same thing, guys. A reel with a faster gear ratio. 6/8 to 1 or higher is a great ratio. This is the older Ike reel, but like the new one, here's my drop shot weight. There's that drop shot keeper. Watch this, ready? Pops right into place. It avoids you hooking the guides or having to do some crazy method of attaching that drop shot weight. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this shop video. Drop shotting does not always mean nose hooking the bait. Think about those 3 hooking methods for your scenario, and you're going to catch more fish. You're going to put more fish in the boat. So hope you enjoyed this shop video. If you like what you're seeing, if you like what you're hearing, do me a favor. Subscribe. You got to subscribe. When you subscribe, we're going to send you notifications on new videos and even some special stuff if you're a subscriber, okay? If you're already subscribed, tell your friends about the channel. It's Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. Have them subscribe. We're going to hopefully help them learn a couple things and catch some more fish. Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli out in the shop. Thanks for watching. And if you like this video, you have to check out that one, and I hope you like them.